Good evening. So welcome to Wings Monthly, episode 9. I'm just about to go off camera because I'm going to add our guests tonight, which will be Dwayne, Dan, and a very, very special guest who I've just seen, just started following, and that is Joshua Cabo GUNDERSON, who was F22 Raptor display pilot. So massive coup for the page. Thank you, Dwayne. I see the guys joining now, so bear with me. Let me just turn my camera off while I add them on. Right, so I've just added, hopefully the guys will join now. So I see Dan and Dwayne. I'm just waiting for Joshua to join as well. Hopefully he's received the invite. If you just accept it, Joshua, you should see a little red camera come up on the bottom of your screen. And if you press it, accept, hopefully it will come through. If not, I'll try and add you again. Bear with.
Evening, boys.
Evening, Dan. Evening, Dwayne. Right, hold a second. So sorry for anyone who's watching. Instagram has been a real pain in the backside tonight to try and get working as per usual. So hopefully, if not, Joshua, if you are watching, you can add at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a little camera with a plus. If you press that, we can accept you into onto the feed. So well, yeah, while we're waiting for Joshua to come on, so the plan tonight is obviously the first part of this is going to be Joshua talking through obviously some of the experience whilst being, I don't want to say interrogated by Dan and Dwayne, but questioned, I guess, because there's going to be quite a few questions that come up. So if anybody does have any questions for him, please use the little thing at the bottom of the screen with the question mark in. He's just requested, so bear with me. Yeah. But honestly, just to emphasise, how privileged we are to have him join tonight. Obviously, he's doing it on his own time as well. Oh, there he is. Good evening, Joshua. How are you doing?
Yes, how's it going? Yeah, I tried on my laptop, and I guess it wasn't.
Oh no, not the laptop. We had that. So one of our regulars, Christian, who lives down in Australia, he often uses his laptop and then comes on with a barrage of obscenities when he joins. But look, before we get cracking, just want to say a massive thank you. I know obviously Dwayne's made this happen, but for you to come on tonight, obviously we're really, really privileged. I know obviously we're going to be talking toys and a lot of it. I say toys, I mean they're replica diecast models, but I mean, so for you to come on and talk about real world, and dare I say, everybody who's watching has got job envy of you. We all wanted to fly as kids, and some of us didn't quite make it, but some lucky sods do. So look, we're really, really privileged to have you on tonight, mate. So thank you for taking time out to join us as well. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Super happy to be here and happy to share any experiences or answer any questions you may have. I was, like you mentioned, I was just better lucky than good, right? I was fortunate with timing and all those things that worked out to be able to do that job for 3 years, and massively happy to be here and share any insights and answer any questions you guys happen to have.
All right.
And he's modest as well. Now, he's got it all. He's just got it all, hasn't he? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand over to Dwayne and Dan because I'm into my sort of specialist subject is spinny things with the big propellers on the end, with green and brown or green and grey camouflage on, rather than the fast pointy things with afterburners. As much as I love them, I'm a pure Spitfire and Mustang man. But I'm going to hand over to Dwayne and Dan, and we'll get cracking.
Yeah.
No worries.
So really, I'm really glad you were able to accept this invite, Major Cabo, and really, I thank you for having the great humility of being on a small time channel. But yeah, this is where we go ahead. So yes, I just want to ask you, as growing up as a boy, were you given, since this page is about models, were you given any model in particular by any family member or relative that might have put you on that trajectory to become a pilot?
Yeah, great question. And I think I don't recall a time where I didn't want to fly fighter jets. So it was a very consistent theme in my life. And from a young age, I always was interested in fighter aviation. So as a result, for birthday presents or Christmas or whatever it was, I would have asked for model airplanes so I could build them and do all the details and have them in my room. And I actually, it I created this like whole war scene in my room where I had strings of strings holding up the airplanes from the roof of the room, had like
Awesome.
paratroopers and like the whole thing, right? Because it was fascinating to me, and from the time I was a little kid, I wanted to fly the F-15, so I had multiple F-15 models in my room, and but yeah, so it was definitely just kind of reinforced all the things that I was interested in doing.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So Sam,
another fun question I want to ask. As a child, were you ever a fan of Transformers?
I never really got into it, honestly.
Okay,
I watched the movies later on in life, and it's like fun to watch. It's kind of like the Marvel stuff. I wasn't into comic books.
okay,
I didn't play video games growing up or any of that stuff. I was just really focused on flying jets,
okay.
and that was kind of my passion. Yeah,
So
fair play.
basically high school maths and physics.
yeah. Math, physics, really any discipline of science, engineering, I think is important. And like most career fields, right? If you're a physician, as an example, you spend 4 years in med school, then you go on to your residency and all those other things to hone your skills in a specific sector, and you may not use the skills you learn in med school once you specialize. Similar with flying fighter jets, we have the foundational knowledge, but then we apply it in a very specific skill set, and we learn that we're really good at that. But I don't necessarily use math, science, physics, all those things on a regular basis as you would in the classroom. It's really just applied math, science, and physics.
Mm,
So that's kind of how I equate the two.
All
awesome.
right. All right. And so, Major Cabo, did you have any heroes growing up? Like, obviously the US Air Force has a lot of lineage, like,
Mm.
say, George Preddy, the highest scoring Mustang ace, and Gabby Gabreski, the highest scoring P-47 ace. So, did you have any heroes you looked up to? I know on LinkedIn your contact is there with Major Rico Rodriguez,
Yeah.
who's the MiG killer. Yeah. So yeah, he's a part of the mighty gorilla. So have you ever interacted with him?
I've met Rico a couple of times. We're not like close friends or anything like that, but I've met him at a couple of different events. And obviously his story is super cool, and lots of amazing impact on the Air Force. And to answer your question, going back to heroes though, I don't think I had any specific like fighter pilot heroes growing up. In terms of heroes growing up, I would, this may sound silly, but like my mom was my hero growing up. She raised me and my brother as a single parent. They moved actually from Cuba back in 1966. So they immigrated with nothing from Cuba, fled a communist country, and started in America with nothing. Were able to work and develop, and kind of grow the family. Massive, I guess, massive appreciation and respect for my family who took, like literally, my grandfather was 33 with three kids and a wife with a second grade education who fled Cuba and came here after 7 years of waiting, where they repossessed he was a body mechanic on cars. They repossessed his shop, and they came here with nothing, And so, in terms of like heroes, that's a very tangible thing, right? I mean, if I, for example, were blessed with the opportunity to go shoot an enemy aircraft down on behalf of the United States of America, like that's great, but it's really a function of timing and luck, right? Am I in the airplane at the right time in the right scenario? Um, and yes, there's a lot of training that goes into it that to develop the skills to be ready for that moment, but to literally country to another, not speaking the language, having a second grade education, and then growing from there, like that to me that's a childhood hero. In my family, my grandfather, my grandmother, my aunts or my uncles and my mom, they were kind of the heroes growing up.
Amazing, amazing. So, Dan, you had a question to
Yeah,
pop in.
no, I mean, I won't lie. I'm going to stay calm because otherwise I will go full fangirl. And nobody needs to see that. Nobody needs to see that. I'm going to echo what Mark said. Really, big thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
To have somebody in your position to come on to our what was a tiny little page. It is growing quite quickly, and quite proud to say that we've had someone like you on. So, and Dwayne, thank you for obviously reaching out and getting that sorted for us. It's fantastic. The Raptor, I won't lie, is probably my favourite aircraft. I know you've said you love the F-15, but the F-22 is up there. I remember watching it for the first time at Air Tattoo
Mm.
not long ago, and it just absolutely blew my mind. So I suppose one of the questions is, would you put the Raptor up against absolutely anything on the planet and expect it to
Yeah, and so before I answer the question, I just want to clarify. Like, I love the F-15, but if I were to take any airplane into combat, it's the Raptor, hands
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
You know, like it's just a phenomenal piece of kit that like does everything you want to do and more. So yeah, there's obviously a lot of new airplanes out there, whether it's developed in China, Russia,
Hmm.
other countries around the world, and I guess the best way to answer that question without diving into specific
Yeah,
comparisons
yeah.
is like I would take a Raptor against anything in the world, and I'm completely comfortable and happy with that decision.
Awesome.
Like there's nothing else that I would rather take.
I mean,
So,
to be fair, I don't think you could ever put yourself in a position, is that the right way of saying it, where you would feel uncomfortable. Does that make sense? I think if you ever felt uncomfortable taking the jet that you spend the majority of your time in into combat, then something's not quite right. Do you know what I mean?
for sure, for sure.
The
Yeah, I just say that in the sense that like there's, assuming all else being equal and experience level being the same,
Yeah,
if I were equally competent in an F-15, F-16, Rafale, Typhoon,
yeah,
whatever it is, looking at the specifications of the airplane's capabilities, at least I'm aware of. There could be other things that I'm not aware of. Looking at those and comparing them, I would hands down take a Raptor over everything else out
I
there.
don't blame you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do not blame you in the slightest. It was
yeah,
quite nice listening to you at the beginning talking about you having the models hung from your ceiling from such a young age. Because I don't know about Mark, I don't know about Rafe, whether he has things hung up from his ceiling, but I know I've got two boys.
yeah.
And as much as I think it might have been drilled into them from quite a young age, Joey, my eldest, is exactly the same. He's got multiple model aircraft hanging up from his ceiling that we've built together as
That's
like a
awesome.
father-son thing. And
Yeah,
yeah, he's been with me to a couple of air shows. He's sat in a Typhoon, and he's adamant that he wants to sign up when he's older. He wants to
perfect.
be a pilot. So, which I won't lie, scares the living shit out of me. But yeah, it's nice to hear that you've had that from such a young age. It's not something that you've sort of like. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've aspired to be that from. So that's good. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to go full fangirl. You can see me Raptor behind me. I've got that out specially. Have you ever been to the UK on a deployment or air show
Uh,
wise or?
so we never do any air shows in the UK because I started the air show job in
Okay.
2020, and as you know, obviously COVID shut a lot of international stuff down. Kind of a funny story about that. Our first air show was actually in Singapore in February of 2020. I landed in Singapore, and we get there with the team, everything's ready to
Yeah.
go, and then I got an email on my work phone that's asking me, hey, when are you guys landing in Singapore? This COVID thing seems like it, maybe pretty serious. We have to keep you back in the States. And I was like, well, I just landed in Singapore. They're like, oh, great, have a good time, So we fly the show 7 days in a row, and then we fly back to the States, and then everything obviously shut down. But we had a couple of events planned in the UK. We had a couple of events planned in Europe, a couple of events planned in South America.
Yeah.
My first language was Spanish. I learned English in school, and so I was really excited to go to South America, keen to like talk to people. We actually did one in Santiago, Chile in 2022, and that was super cool. We had two guys on my team that were from Puerto Rico, and the three of us, I get out of the airplane. Those two guys were part of the maintenance crew, and we just started talking to the Chileans in Spanish, and they were like, what country are you guys from? We just steal this Raptor? Like what what happened? But being able to connect with people in different areas is important. And I was really looking forward to doing Europe because I lived in Spain for a period of time as well. And I was really looking forward to doing that. But obviously with COVID, everything kind of shut down.
Yeah, I can
Yeah, and
imagine.
just to intervene, and that's how I met Cabo. I mean, I
Yeah.
wanted to say I was working with Norwegian Cruise Lines at the time, and then the cruise industry went to hell at that period. So I was like, wanting to save and go for an air show in Texas, in Houston, but that wasn't possible. So I just randomly, out of like being the fanboy I am, I messaged so, and he was like, okay, I will send you a signed poster, but only post it on social media after I'm out of here. So I got that. I mean, the poster, like, I mean, to send it to literally a nobody was like brilliant. I mean,
Dwayne
I can't,
sleeps with that.
yeah. And I don't, that's a bit too far, but it's there on the wall. It's there on the wall with my George Freddy print. Yeah. So, so yeah, it's like it's there with the other greats. Like for example, This is Johnny Johnson. He was a high-scoring British fighter ace of the war. So yeah, I just have all my I have a bit of a separate space for my fighter aircraft. So yes, Major Cabo. Coming on to my other question, what are your thoughts on the new Raptor with the mirror coating? Like, what's all that about?
Yeah, so in terms of what it's about, the F-22, there are a lot of modernization efforts that happen all the time in the airplane. Most of it, I'd say 95% of it is not visible because it's all underneath the airplane. It's all electronic, either hardware or software changes, sensor changes. But they're looking at different options to adjust the exterior of the airplane as well, potentially, just to mitigate certain threats. I don't have a whole lot of specific details that
You
I
won't
can
ask
share
for them.
about it. Yeah. So I mean, that I can share, but I think if you do some internet research, you can probably find out like why they would do that. But it's like I said, the airplane has generally speaking been unchanged from an exterior perspective since its inception, but there are always modernization efforts happening underneath the skin, and that keeps the airplane above in terms of um, above peer adversary. It's above everything else out there. But this is just one of those efforts they're looking into to see if they can, maybe find some benefits by changing the exterior components.
Okay. And so right now, I don't know if you know, I've seen this video, but there's a video surfacing on the internet of an Su-35 doing a very dangerous maneuver over the skies in Alaska near an F-16. I don't know if you've seen the video.
Oh, it is. Yeah. I
Yeah.
did see that.
So what are your thoughts on such reckless behavior?
Uh, it's
Be
like
careful. You
the
don't have to just to put in. You don't have to go too far into your political views into what certain countries are doing if you don't want to. But
Yes,
oh yeah, no
it's
worries.
I
just a
want to
So
be I
disclaimer
want to
out there.
be a little bit careful as to what we say on
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
no,
yeah.
obviously with caution, if you can answer it
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, for sure. And I lived in Alaska for 4.5 years. I also sat alert in Alaska for a couple of months before I was stationed there, and then that 4.5 year period of being stationed there, I sat alert as well. Um, so I've intercepted plenty of airplanes, and have you guys seen the movie Red October with Sean Connery?
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I've
like the
seen it.
old. It's like either that flanker pilot had too much bad vodka or doing the crazy Ivan. I don't know, but it's reckless, right? And I think there's a cat and mouse game that happens continuously. We have airplanes overseas that we try to surveil and collect information. Across all the partner nations, whether it's NATO partner nations or any other coalition in the Western kind of countries. We have airplanes that are out there trying to collect and do things on an intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance effort. But we do everything we can to be respectful and be predictable, and that's the biggest thing, right? Like you can project some kind of deterrence posture with an airplane without being reckless. And I think that's just a professional pilot thing, right? Like if you're an unprofessional pilot, then you're going to do those silly moves that you saw on the video. It's just unprofessional and very provocative, and I don't think there's a need to escalate, because they're doing their missions, our airplanes do their missions. They'll intercept our airplanes, we intercept their airplanes. It has been a cat and mouse game that goes on, even if it's not in the news, it goes on continuously. So there, ebbs and flows with different events in the calendar, but generally speaking, they're very professional. Like I've never had any bad experiences with the Russian Air Force in terms of experiences like that. Definitely surprising that happened, but it's very like escalatory and very provocative maneuvering, which I don't think helps. Because honestly, uh, now you start blurring the lines of rules of engagement, what you're trying to do for self-defense. I mean, if somebody's trying to run into you with an airplane, like does that constitute self-defense? The F-16 guy completely legally protected to just shoot him down and call it a day? Like I don't know. So there are just a lot of gray areas and opens ambiguity that could potentially lead to further escalation, which is not what anybody wants.
Yeah, definitely not. No, I really want peace. And so another thing I wanted to ask you, what is your opinion on the decision to retire the A-10 and let the F-35 go into that role? Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, great question as well. And I think the A10 is phenomenal. So I have Lots of really great friends that fly the A-10. I mean, countless people I've met that work and serve on the ground, whether it's the Air Force, Army, Navy, Marine Corps that are on, ground elements that have been saved by the A-10. So I'm a huge fan of the A-10. I think it's a phenomenal airplane. In the conflict we were in the Middle East for the last 20 plus years, I think the A-10 is a perfect airplane. The surface to air threats that the A-10 was faced with were pretty minimal. So I don't think the A-10 was really in severe danger of being shot down, right? And that's where I think the transition from the A-10 to the F-35 makes sense, because when we think about near peer or peer adversaries that happen to be in the globe, the A-10 is not survivable against a very, very intense or sophisticated surface-to-air network of missiles or AAA. It's just not, right, because this airplane, the A-10 was developed in the 70s, and now it's facing a surface-to-air threat that is developed in the 2010s, 2020s, and it's just pretty remarkable things that are out there on our side, on the adversary side, on both sides. So the F-35 is survivable. And that's where I think the benefit lies, and we have to make decisions. We don't have an infinite money supply. It'd be super nice if we did, but we don't. So we have to allocate. Allocate our budget appropriately. And if it came down to keeping the A-10 around, to fight a threat of insurgents and terrorists on the ground, or to divert that money to an airplane that could be survivable in a large-scale conflict, then I think they made the right decision. Like, that doesn't change the fact that I love the A-10. And doesn't change the fact that I think the A-10 is a phenomenal piece of kit that's going to, that has saved people's lives. But I think we need to focus our resources, i.e. money and time and people, on the things that potentially are existential threats. Like, what is going to wipe America off the map? What is going to threaten our ability to survive as a nation? And what is going to protect our nation in terms of people? Because that's our first and foremost priority, is to make sure that American population and our partner nations are safe. And if we can't do that with an airplane because it's outdated, then we need to find a better use of funds, no matter what the physical and emotional connection is to that airplane. It's one of the reasons why I don't like buying super old cars. I love the appeal of old cars, right? I love tinkering on stuff, and it's a very cool thing. I don't personally own any of those old cars, because to me, like, the car serves a purpose. It's transportation from point A to point B. And if it fails to meet that, if it's not safe and it's not reliable, then I'm going to get a safe and reliable vehicle, because it's not meeting the mission. And that's the kind of decision making I think they were looking at in terms of budgets and missions out there.
Fair enough. So, yeah, Dan, any questions? Any side questions? Any side?
I was just looking. We've put out on our comments. I know, Matt, you put on there if anybody's got any questions that some of our viewers want to ping over. I hope that's right with you. If you don't want to answer any, I won't lie. Some of them I don't even know what they mean. So if you just want to do no comment, just say no comment. That's absolutely fine. Cabo, what are your? Sorry, buddy, carry on.
No, go ahead. If you want to read the questions out loud, I can, and that way you can kind of filter out what you think is good, and I'll answer them whatever you ask.
Mark knows me. I don't have a filter. Cabo, what are your thoughts on the new R1 integration and the future advancements of the F22 program?
So I can't get into tons of specifics on that in terms of the upgrades and modernization efforts of the F22, like timelines and capabilities. I think, the test community, which is what I'm a part of here in Las Vegas, is pretty great, and it's stuff that's needed, right? So we're doing our due diligence and testing these things, and realize as things get released, we're already 2, 3, 4, 5 iterations ahead of the release here, testing it to make sure that it's good to go. But it's taking tech and just integrating, whether it's hardware or software solutions, to keep the airplane at the peak of its capabilities in terms of performance.
Definitely so. And I think it's also about the current integration of AI with almost everything. It's like everywhere.
I think there's some, in terms of AI specifically, I think there's definitely a need for fighter pilots in the cockpit still, and maybe there'll be one day where we use fighter aircraft and it's autonomous. I don't think that's anytime soon. I think there's a phenomenal place for drones, and leveraging AI and drone technology is great. in a fighter cockpit, things are a lot more dynamic. If you're in a Predator or a Reaper, you have time. Like there's nothing that's in a rush. Like it's not, nothing's happening right this second. If you're dogfighting, if you're trying to process information and see what the airplane's telling you, integrate that and understand with your human brain and the training and years of experience you've developed, then you have the ability to analyze a very gray situation. And I think that, fog and friction of war is absolutely 100% a thing still. And, if we can solve that, then maybe we have AI, flying fighter jets. But until we can, effectively navigate the fog and friction or gray scenarios in combat, I don't think using AI makes a whole lot of sense, because ultimately, if it's going to take somebody's life and it did that based off partial or incorrect information, we as a nation are still responsible for that decision. So if a computer takes somebody's life and it was incorrect based off incomplete or inaccurate data, we're still responsible for that.
If anything,
and I don't think it's the risk we're
if anything, I think it makes it harder if AI makes that decision instead of a person in the cockpit, a pilot in the cockpit. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So no.
All right.
Awesome.
Just to coattail on that, Major Cabo, since we are as we said, a diecast community, if you can remember which was your first F22 with the serial number, because we are planning and petitioning to make a model that specifically has your name on it.
Oh, man. Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
While I have you on the call here, I can look it up. I've got my logbook here. 1 second. You can keep asking questions, or I'll look it up.
Yeah, so that would be very cool, because then we can even contact the manufacturer if you can get in also on it and maybe sign the stands, because then it can be a very, very big collectible, Like we've had some of the aircraft models signed by Bud Anderson, who passed away recently. And we also have Bud Anderson. We've had also some of the Tuskegee Airmen who signed the models, and they've made they've obviously, it's a 50-50 split up. So I would definitely want something like that for you also, so because you have really given your time, and I really admire your humility to acknowledge a nobody in some ways.
No, and just before you finish that thought, I just want to make sure we're very clear. Please don't put me in the same category as Bud Anderson and the Tuskegee Airmen, because they are way cooler than I'll ever be. But I mean, I'm happy to do it. The tail number was 014023.
01. Is there a dash or anything?
Yeah, 01-4023.
Okay.
Amazing. Look at that. Dwayne, do you mind if I ask a question?
Yeah.
It feels really weird, because I mean,
normally you
obviously
don't shut up.
No, this is it. Usually I'm the anchor and I talk for 2 hours pretty much on and off. And to sit here and watch is absolutely delightful and insightful and fascinating. And, I mean, like I said, I know I touched upon, no, I'm a Warbird fan, but I guess I've got a couple of questions. First one, I guess, for me is, as a pilot, when was that moment you was up, God knows how many feet in the air, and you've looked out the window and you've gone, this is it. This is what it's all about. But also on the flip side, at what moment in your career did you think, oh shit, there's something wrong, that this isn't going as planned? So that sort of that balance. So what those two moments for you?
So I would say, especially earlier in your career, right? It's new, it's uncharted territory. So you're learning a new skill set, all those things. And there are many images in my brain that, I can kind of file away and just see this glimpse. I remember when I went to Oregon for the first time for my F-15 school, they were on a night week. So I saw the airplanes taking off at sunset, 2 afterburners just ripping out of the back of the F-15. It was just like incredible. But I think like the first time I looked out and I was like, this is epic, was when I was flying. It was my third high aspect BFM ride in the F-15 school. And at the time, the instructor I was flying with, Colonel Miller, he was the highest time F-15C pilot in the Air Force at the time, and I was probably the least experienced F-15C pilot in the Air Force. And we get into a tree, which basically means we're like just fighting for 3-9 advantage between for forward position to see who gets behind the other person for an advantage. and it was sunset, and the afterburners were like ripping. So we're like super nose high, very slow. Afterburners are ripping out the back of the airplane, and it's sunset. And I was like, this is like the coolest thing ever. I'm getting paid to do the coolest job in the world. And once again, it just really highlighted the point of him being the most experienced guy, and I was probably the least experienced guy at the time. And it was just a very, very cool, surreal moment that I'll never forget. In terms of like this isn't going great moments, I had a mechanical failure in an F-22 up in Alaska, and it was just a component that that failed, and that's part of mechanical things, whether it's cars or airplanes. Things break, but I got pretty close to not being here anymore. I mean, within fractions of a second. So pretty close. And that was definitely a time where I think we do a really good job in the military of habituating specific tasks and practicing emergency procedures to become second nature. And when that scenario completed and ended, and I was on the ground safe, and airplane wasn't great, but it was repairable. I actually flew that airplane a couple months later after the maintenance guys did some phenomenal work and repaired it. I sat there and I just, once again, you get this understanding of there are lots of things, and I don't get down the super spiritual path here, but I believe there are other forces at play in life. And
Yeah.
I was,
Yep.
for all the consecutive little miracles to happen for me to not be dead right now, it was more than my own ability. I know I'm a good pilot, but I'm not that good of a pilot to have all that stuff work out the way it did. So I'm incredibly thankful that, one, I was the person in the airplane when that happened, because my experience was one component of the outcome of surviving. But it was also, if it had been a younger guy, maybe that experience level wouldn't have been there, could have ended up catastrophically. So I'm thankful I was in the airplane and not somebody else. And I'm thankful that there are other forces, in my opinion, that are at play that were able to kind of get me through that. Because when you think about all, like I said, all the flight controls, the engines, like all the components that, that need to happen a certain way for me to still be alive, like that was a pretty large list. And I'm not that good, so
Yeah.
that was
So
like, that was the moment.
yeah, so
Someone was looking out for you.
definitely had a guardian angel or Saint Michael. Saint Michael is in fact the patron of the U.S. Air Force, so you
Yeah.
definitely had him looking out for you. But yeah, coming on to the other points. I would also now I would like to just ask you about the Cabo program that you've just started.
Mm.
With regard to how you've transitioned from a fighter pilot to a corporate pilot, and how the quick decision making matters with regard to where the corporate office is. I attended your seminar, of course,
Mhm.
and yes, just a few words about that, and also the foundation you're running.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks for giving me the time to talk about it as well. I left the Air Force full time, so I'm still part time working on F-22 stuff in the Air National Guard here in Nevada, at Nellis Air Force Base. But I'm a corporate pilot now, and I absolutely love it. It's been a great job. I get to work for an individual who I highly respect and is involved in a lot of cool stuff. So I get to be involved in that in some capacity, and um, I really like that. I think the commercial airlines is what all fighter pilots or Air Force pilots, Navy pilots are told to do, and that, like, this is what you should do, and this is the path. Um, and I think there are lots of amazing benefits. I think it provides you some level of stability that corporate aviation does not do. But I also looked at time as our most valuable resource, and for me, I was like, man, I can account for my life from 18 years old to 65 years old in 4 decisions. Like, I go to the Air Force Academy, I go to pilot training, I stay in the Air Force until 20 years on a bonus, and then I go to the airlines, because there's really no incentive to leave the airlines once you go, right? You're a seniority number at that point in
Mm-hmm.
time. So you're stuck. You're basically, I mean, you're not stuck. You can leave if you want to, but there's no incentive financially to leave the airlines once you're there. The incentive financially is to continue on in the airline until you retire at 65. I think EASA is like 68 now, but the FAA in the United States is still 65. So it's like I can account for 18 years old to 65 years old in 4 decisions, and that to me was terrifying. I'm like, life has to be, you know, more ups and downs and
Mm.
more interesting, at least for me. And I had the the situation where I wasn't married, no kids or any of those things. So I had the ability to make that decision, which once again, I think the airlines provide great stability if you do have other considerations in your life. But I'm very thankful for the corporate job. And it's been great to work. It's been great to work with people that I respect and look up to and be a part of that. In terms of the course I launched, so it's kind of two parts. So one, I think everybody who has a job, which is majority of people on the globe, they have some boss, they have somebody that's in charge of them, and they also are leading people either, laterally, their peer group, or they're, leading a group of people on their team. And I would say most organizations, whether it's business, whether it's military, whatever it happens to be, most organizations don't fail because like the product's bad. I mean, if you started a company and it's growing, like your product's probably good enough, right? Like it's probably marketable and all those things. Most organizations fail over time because of bad leadership. And I'm like, okay, well, what things can we do from the fighter pilot community to leverage knowledge and share that? So what I did was I developed a 15 module course that goes through leadership and decision-making skills from the fighter pilot world. And there are a lot of overlaps, right? There are other organizations like the Navy SEALs as an example. You've probably seen Jocko Willink and Leif Babin and the amazing work they're doing at Echelon Front. There are a lot of leadership lessons from the military that I think are important and can be transferred to the civilian world. And they're approaching it from the lens of Navy SEALs. I think there's some overlap there for sure, but we just have, I think, a different skill set as a fighter pilot group than you would as a Navy SEAL. Like our operating environments, our decision-making, the issues we're facing are just different. And so I was like, okay, well, let me make this, because it goes through leadership, planning, executing, debriefing, decision-making skills, so those modules. And I'm also not the best fighter pilot in the world. I'm definitely not the best leader in the world by a long shot. So I was like, well, how do I make this authentic and really add value to people's lives? And I was like, well, I know a lot of great people that are both, better fighter pilots and better leaders than I am. So let me get them involved in this as well. And each one of the modules has a, 6 to 12-minute video of me covering the topics. It also has downloadable PDFs that you can download to reinforce the knowledge. And it also has about a 30-minute interview with another fighter pilot. I've got people that are weapons school graduates, test pilot graduates, Thunderbird commanders. All these people are on this courseware as well. That are, in the interview process and giving their specific content and perspective on the module topics themselves. There's also some really cool 360 F22 cockpit footage. So if you have like Oculus goggles or Meta Quest goggles or something like that, you can actually watch 360 in the Raptors if you're in the cockpit and just like look around. It's pretty cool. And we did a promotional giveaway for one of the people that purchased the course. I bought a MetaQuest 3 goggle set. I preloaded it with a bunch of really cool Raptor footage from Alaska, Hawaii, Virginia, Chicago, all over the place. And I sent it to her. I was actually getting to her house today. But I did that, and part of it's like to share knowledge for leadership and all those skills we talked about. And so I think the authenticity comes from the fact that we're including lots of other people into this course. It's not just me saying, hey, my name's Cabo, I'm the coolest fighter pilot, I'm the best leader, listen to me. I don't think I have the authority to do that. But if I have a lot of group of people, a lot of people that are really high performing, well respected fighter pilots that are also in this, now it's collective knowledge. And when I totaled up the years, it's over 300 years of collective experience that we're sharing in the courseware, which I think is pretty compelling. And so anyways, I launched that last week, which has been great. It's a lot of work, but it's been worthwhile, I think. And the whole point, like Dwayne was mentioning, was, I started a foundation, an aviation foundation. And the point of the aviation foundation is to take stories of young adults who have overcome diversities in their life. Because if you look around, most societies are filled with people that, adopt a victim mentality of like, oh, my life is so tough, it's so hard, poor me, you should feel bad for me, give me free stuff. And that's not the environment I was raised in. That's not the mindset my family adopted when they fled Cuba with nothing to start over again in America. That's not the story of countless Americans who have moved here, emigrated from other countries, who have started over. Like, that's not the mentality to take, And the sad truth is, or the inconvenient truth is, we all have issues in our own personal lives. Like there in no scenario would any three of you care about my life issues more than you care about your life issues, and vice versa, right? We all have our own issues. Like we had 2 hurricanes, one hitting right now in Florida. That's where my family's from, or my family lives. The last one, we had 2 family members that lost their homes. So I've got stuff in my life that's going on, and everybody has stuff in their life that's going on, whether you can see it or you can't see it. But how do we share stories of young adults who are overcoming these adversities in their life and really crushing it? They could use faith, family, the military, working out, academia, tons of examples where kids have turned to these things and made their life a success. And I think it's important because when you look at podcasts, I love Joe Rogan podcasts. You look at Lex Friedman, like a lot of great podcasts out there. But generally speaking, their guests are their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they're not relatable to a 15-year-old kid in school anymore. And that's the demographic that I think is important to address, because in 40 years' time, they're running our countries. Whether we invest our time in them or we don't, they're the ones leading the country, and the politicians that are making decisions that affect all of our nations. So
terrifying in a way.
It's like I'd rather live in a world that I'm investing time in them to help them develop resilience 100%. And the skill sets they need. So that's the Uplift Aviation Foundation piece. And the reason I started the Fighter Pilot Focus course was, one, to share the knowledge, but I'm taking 50% of the profits from that course and dumping it straight into the nonprofit. So really, it's a vessel for me to share knowledge, but also to self-fund really important impact work. And I've seen too many nonprofits that are constantly, on the hook and trying to ask for money because they can't effectively run without obviously investments in capital and donations. And it's like, well, that's not a very sustainable model. And I don't want to hinge the success of a program that I think is important on somebody else's donations. So let me start a company, create value where I can, and then use that money to self-fund the nonprofit. And when I did the math, I think, Dwayne, you're on the call. Our introductory pricing was basically, $1.
$539.
Yeah. So when you think about over a year's time, that's $1.62 a day that you're spending on your own personal development. You can spend more. You spend 5 times that amount at Starbucks for a cup of coffee.
Or on Diecast models.
Or on Diecast models, yeah.
No, we don't. No.
So it's like the goal there, like the goal really is to like create amazing value for people that's going to help enhance their personal and professional life, and then also self-fund something that I think is important, because I want to spend my the time I have for the Aviation Foundation, I want to spend that time on impact. I don't want to spend that time asking people for money. Like, I'm not going to have my hat out begging for change to do something that I think is important. I'd rather just go create the value myself and then self-fund it.
Fair play.
Fair enough.
Can I just say that you are probably one of the most humble men I've ever had the experience of speaking to in my life.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable. What you doing and what you've got planned just sounds immense. You should be pretty proud of what you do, what you have done, and what you're planning to do in the future, because it sounds incredible, mate. It really does.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I look at the friends and mentors and people that I've had that have influenced my life and shaped it, and I'm like, well, who would I be if I didn't try to pay that forward? My goal is, like, when I die at some point in my future, like, I want to have given more than I've ever taken for anybody, and even in bad interactions. When I look at that, I look at potentially bad interactions with people where you feel like maybe they took advantage of you or whatever. Like, that's fine. Like, I'd rather go to my grave knowing that I did what I thought was right at the time and gave people the best I possibly could have, and that's on them. And as the old adage says, broken people hurt people. It's like people are going through their own things, and I just decided, like, I want to give back more than exponentially more than I've been, I've received or taken in my life, because I think that's a life well lived. And when I'm 80 years old, looking in the mirror, I want to be proud of that.
So just on a side note, before we have our concluding comments, you're always welcome to visit Mumbai anytime you want. As an
I'd love to. It'd be great. Yeah.
Same with London.
You
ever come to London, Joshua? Honestly, I will buy you a beer, fruit juice, whatever you drink. I will buy you a Cristal champagne if you need to. I think, just to echo what Dan says, one thing I try and drill into my little boy, I've got a 10-year-old son, is to be humble and to appreciate the good things, because you talk about people having bad runs, and I don't want to get too down on myself, because I've come through it now. I've gone through that. You talk about leadership behaviours. I'm sure you understand the change curve. I'm a manager, and I'm fascinated by leader behaviours, and my management style is made up with the mentors who looked after me,
Yeah.
and the not so good ones where I've reversed what they do that have made me feel crap, you know. And it fascinates me, and I feel that each week I look and reflect on myself and try and be either a better dad, a better human being, or a better manager, either or all three. And it's really, really important to keep that. But yeah, just sort of like Dan said, you know, the humbleness I think is key. You know, you've come from nothing and made everything of yourself, and that is, you know, it's a real good story to tell and share as well. And now, if I don't know if you've been looking at the comments that have been coming through, and everyone has been saying, you know, no, I haven't interacted with him, but my God, what a great guy. And this is, I guess people just tuned in, whether it's the first time we follow you on the page and stuff like that. And I think that speaks volumes, and you get a real feel for somebody when they come on. But like I said, no, from our point of view, look, thank you so much for doing this. I've got a couple of questions before, obviously, we go to the concluding bits, because a couple of people have asked. So my cousin, of all people, obviously this runs in the family, being what we call over here plain dorks. I mean, we call him something else as well, but I won't use the word on him. But my cousin Lara, she's a photographer. She lives in what we call Bomber County, which is Lincolnshire, which is sort of like the east of England, East Anglia. Yeah. You know, we call it Bomber County because generally the RAF bomber stations were there, while the like the Mighty Eight were more sort of southeast of that. Well, she works in a school and has 3 10-year-olds who want to be pilots. Is there any advice or words of wisdom for them?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think that's a great age to like really get into it, because you're at that point, you're old enough to understand what it is, and you can still have the ability to like shape your life. So I mean, I'll answer the question, but I want to qualify it by saying I don't know what the entrance requirements are for the RAF. I don't know if you need a university degree or you don't. I know the RAAF in Australia, they don't need a uni degree, so you can just go and out of high school based on testing and your performance. But if the RAF does need university, then that's obviously a specific topic that needs to be addressed with like the RAF side. I think the one thing I've seen, you know, like, and this is kind of like life advice that I've applied to the Air Force Academy, which is where I went to school. One thing is obviously do well in school, because if you want to get into an elite program like flying fighter jets and Typhoons or whatever you want to fly, you know, F-35s, you have to have good grades, because it's the easiest disqualifier for the military to say like, well, you didn't work hard in school, so why would we give you this opportunity to fly the most advanced jets? So like, my goal here is like to not give them opportunities to say no, right? You want to give them as many opportunities to say yes as possible. And you immediately take yourself out of the discussion if you don't have, you know, good grades and don't study in school there, because you need that foundational knowledge to apply it then in flying jets. The second thing I would say is to find other activities that you're interested in doing, whether it's sports, music, whatever it is. And at least in the U.S. side, all the pilots are officers. I think that's the same thing in the RAF and the RAAF. Yeah. You know, and you're going to be leading people. So find opportunities to do sports, do activities, whether it's, you know, it could be, like I said, music, it could be whatever, and try to find ways to take leadership roles in your teams. So if you're playing soccer, football, like be the team captain, you know, and I think that shows your desire to be a leader as opposed to just be a part of the team. And in the military, you're going to be leading people as an officer, as a pilot. So that's important, and they want to see that sort of stuff, which I think is probably transferable between the U.S. Air Force and the RAF. And then the last thing I would say is, and this is more geared towards the Air Force Academy here, and maybe somewhere in the UK, but most kids today interact with their cell phones, and they're just doing this. They just text back and forth. They have no ability to communicate effectively with other people, hold a conversation. So I would say, if you don't have any experience interacting with people and talking to people, like maybe join a debate club, or maybe pay for somebody that's going to help you with interview prep and communication skills, because at least in the U.S. Air Force, when you apply to the Air Force Academy and do all those things, like those personal communication skills are important, and that could make or break the difference of you getting the nomination to the Air Force Academy or not. So your ability to hold eye contact, be engaging, answer questions effectively, and be articulate with those answers is a skill set that develops over time. And I think humans before technology did this more regularly. They just had conversations on a more regular basis, and now we don't. So it's still a skill set that's important, especially when you're leading people. And I'd say that's an area that I would look at as well. especially if you don't have experience in that or haven't done interviews. I mean, I remember my interview with a congressman's office. It was a panel of 10 people, and I went into a room. They were sitting at a table, and there was like a chair in the middle of the room, and it was a massive room. So I'm just like by myself in this chair, and there are 10 people staring at me, asking me questions, and like, you know, thought-provoking questions like how do we achieve peace in the Middle East? You know, and I'm like a 15-year-old kid. I'm like, peace in the Middle East is a 15-year-old kid. Like, how do I answer that? So it's a kind of a daunting task if you've never done that sort of stuff. So I encourage that as well. One thing I will say, apart from those three kind of pieces, and to quickly recap, one, do well in school. Two, find activities that you're passionate and want to do well at and take leadership roles. And three, be comfortable with interviewing and just communication skills that we probably are lacking as communities and societies now. As a general observation, I have found when I've instructing in fighter jets, the young pilots who played, you know, sports that required hand-eye coordination, generally speaking, I felt flew better in the airplane as a general rule of thumb. Now, I played baseball growing up, you know, as my family's, you know, majority from Cuba. My uncle played professional baseball, and I looked very similar to him. So it was like, oh, you're obviously playing baseball. I'm like, of course. But, you know, baseball, lacrosse, hockey, like all those like hand-eye coordination skills, especially when you start them at a young age and you develop those skills, I think it just naturally translates into flying airplanes because it is, you know, spatial awareness. When you're fighting somebody with an airplane, your ability to understand subtle movements, subtle changes, like the flight controls in their airplanes are deflecting, or the, you know, like the range perceptions and all these things. It's hand-eye coordination, right? And then you're translating that perception into executing with your left and right hands and your feet. So I think those skills and those sports that kind of focus and rely upon development of hand-eye coordination, I think would probably be a good place to go, especially as a young kid, to kind of get that skill set, because I think it does translate really well. There's actually a really funny story. One of the Air National Guard units here in the States, they have the opportunity to hire people straight from the street. So like they went to the university, got their degree, and they want to go fly fighter jets, and they can hire them straight into the unit to go fly whatever airplane they fly. And it was always a running joke that one of the units would finish the interview process, and you would look at, you know, the resumes, and you would bring them in, ask them questions. And the very last step of the interview is they would go outside, take an American football, and play catch. And it's like, if you can't play catch, then we're not hiring you. And it was just like hilarious, right? Because it's like this hand-eye coordination thing. Like, are you an athlete? Can you make this happen? And if they couldn't, it's like, oh, I don't know about this guy. So,
Wow,
it's
okay,
just kind of
as
funny
simple as
little
that.
anecdote.
That's
Yeah,
mental.
I mean that's obviously like at the very end of it, right? So they've already gone through the vetting process and everything. But I think hand-eye coordination really is important in fighter jets.
Cool,
Brilliant.
like it. I've Mark, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask one question, and it might not even be answerable, but I listened to, or not listened to it for a while. I don't know whether you have Fighter Pilot podcast. I don't know whether you've listened to that, and they asked one
He's
question
come
on
on an
there.
episode. He's come on an episode.
Have you been on there?
I was on the Afterburn podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know
I think
whether you've been asked this question before. Call sign.
Yeah, that's over a pint. That's over a pint later. But it's a.
You can't tell us the story how you got that.
I'll tell you that it was when I was a young pilot in Japan, and the three kind of qualifying reasons you get a call sign. One, it symbolizes you're now legally able to go employ, this airplane in combat. So that's like that's like signed off, like you're able to go to combat, and now you have a call sign. And the call sign really comes from three different sources. So either one, you have a funny name.
Stupid thing did you do?
Well, it's there's three things, right? It's either you have a funny name. So for example, the wrestling maneuver, the full Nelson.
Yep.
So there's a buddy of mine. His last name is Nelson. His call sign's Full. There's another guy that I know. His last name is Buddy, Budde, and his call sign's Nacho, Notcho. It's like Nacho Buddy, like I'm not your buddy, dude.
Okay. Yeah.
From the from the skit. So there's funny name. There's also you look funny. So there's an F-15 guy who looks like the human embodiment of the character Shrek.
Wow.
So his call sign is Shrek. So either a funny name, you look funny, or a funny story. Mine was a funny story. And it's actually like it was one of those ones where I'm actually like pretty happy with the story. It wasn't like a crazy, I told my family, told people like that. Like it's not an embarrassing story by any means. It just involves alcohol, involves some drinking competitions in Okinawa, Japan.
Nice.
Okay.
Say no more.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Say no more. Oh, I love it. Fantastic.
Thank you
Mark, did
for.
you have any more? Did you have any more questions, Mark,
I
from the comments?
did have one more. Yeah. So
Yeah.
obviously I've sort of touched on this again, but so have you ever done any work with the Heritage Flight? And even if you haven't, is there any ambition to fly warbirds? Because I would imagine you're quite a desirable pilot to put behind the Merlin engine on a Mustang in particular.
Yeah. So I did fly with the Heritage Flight Foundation for 3 years. So I was flying the F-22 alongside the Warbirds. And my last 3 months of active duty time in the Air Force, I actually spent at the museum in Southern California. And I was turning wrenches, helping work on airplanes, change the radiator of a Mustang a couple times, and a lot of experienced people there. And they're amazing human beings. So to learn from that level of knowledge and just sincere humans, was great. Got to fly in the backseat of Mustang a couple times. And I would love to fly Warbirds at some point. So we'll see if that becomes an opportunity or presents itself. If it does, then great. If it doesn't, I've gotten to the place in life, where I just realize that there are things we can control and things we can't control. And if I can't control it, I'm not going to stress about it. I'm not going to worry about it. If the opportunity presents itself, then I'll absolutely take advantage of it. Because I'd love to do that. I love the Mustang, much like I'm sure the folks in the UK love the Spitfire. It's just like this nostalgia and this symbolism of that airplane and a time that both of our countries went through that was, absolutely harrowing. So to be able to like remember and preserve heritage and history in that way would be an absolute honor for me to do. And I would love to do it if possible.
This sounds like a campaign we need to run now, lads.
I'm not sure if Dwayne's gone. Gentlemen, I'm going to have to be Cabo. I'd absolutely love that, but I am due on another call, so
Okay.
I must apologise. I've got to shoot. Mark's
that's great.
I'm not sure whether.
He's
Dwayne's
disappeared.
Yeah.
Oh no, he'll probably be back. But thank you ever so much. I'm going to say thank you now because I'm going to have to shoot off. All right.
That was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
I think I already follow you on Instagram, but I'll drop you a quick message on there just to say thank you again, and see if you've got any F-22 goodies that you might be able to send up to the UK or something like that.
Sounds good.
Bit of swag, awesome stuff. Right. Cheers, guys. Mark, I'll catch up with you in a bit.
Yeah, no worries. Dwayne seems to have disappeared. So look, Cabo, look, I really appreciate you coming on tonight. Yeah. I'm sure I speak to everybody who's joined in tonight. I mean, I've seen hundreds of people join the feed as you've been going along. So look, thank you for dedicating your time and giving us an hour of your time. I won't keep you much longer. What part of the US are you in at the moment?
I live between, basically I live in both places, but Vegas and Reno, Nevada.
Oh my word. Blimmin' hell.
Yeah, so yeah, it's beautiful.
That is one hell of a place to live. Vegas is very. If you ever been, the first time I've been there, I found it quite overwhelming the first day I was there. But
yeah,
one hell of a place. I wish I'd gone to Nellis. I was there for 10 days as well. So I was watching. Believe it or not, being a Brit, I was actually watching 10-pin bowling. A thing. I forget the name of it now. It's Europe versus the USA. It no longer exists, unfortunately. But we were watching that at the Mandalay Bay, and it was a fantastic experience being there. But it was one hell of a place. I stayed in the Luxor. I ended up getting sunburn off of the Luxor, the side because the sun hits the glass. So one side of my arm was red raw, where the sun had hit the glass and come off and burnt my arm. So I mean, what a place to live. But look, I'm deviating. But look, thank you so much for coming on. I'm sure
massively appreciate
Dwayne.
Pleasure.
Dwayne is going to push to get your aircraft made by Hobby Master, and let's hope we can get that done. I think that'd be a lovely gesture from the team at Hobby Master. People collect display birds all the time, and you've got an iconic part. Unfortunately, you turned up in the middle of probably the worst part in modern history. But you were still massively appreciated for what you did. So it'd be great if we can get that built for you. But look, we'll let you carry on with the rest of your day now. But thank you so much, guys. Yeah. Thank you everyone for tuning in to watch Cabo give his thoughts on everything he's done for his career. But look, we'll stay in contact, mate. But look, thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks,
Cheers. And good luck with your business as well. Good luck with your leadership business, which sounds absolutely fascinating and will be brilliant to get obviously you're giving back to people from a career that obviously has been well spent. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Have a good night. Cheers.
No worries. Take care.
Boys.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye. So Dan is going to drop off now. I'm trying to add Dwayne back on so we can do a little bit of diecast talk, but for some reason he has disappeared. I've no idea where he's gone. So bear with me, guys. Let me try and see if we can add him back in. Oh, Dwayne here using my mum's phone. Okay, Dwayne. So I'll get more room about there we go. That makes sense. I don't know where you got your mum's phone from, Dwayne, but slightly worrying. But thank you everyone for joining. And I'm sure I've just seen some messages come through. One from my cousin as well. But yeah, what a fascinating guy. And you know, the word humble comes to mind. He's lived a brilliant career. And he's given his time to us tonight. So I hope you've all enjoyed that, guys. We're going to do a little bit of diecast talk now. I'm not going to talk too long tonight because there's not an awful lot that's gone on. But thank you for sorting that out, Dwayne. Really appreciate it, mate.
Yeah, sure.
So right now, let's talk through some recent releases. So well, I was going to do a little bit on the air show season, but I might leave that till next month. Yeah. I don't want this to go on too long tonight. I'm still recovering from COVID. Yeah. So let's talk through the HM poster, Dwayne. So what do you think was the real standout on that?
For me, obviously, the inclusion of the Indian Rafale.
So have you got any Rafales yet by Hobby Master?
Yeah, so they're releasing which are the one they're releasing. I don't quite fancy the Japanese F22 Raptor.
It's fascinating. I mean, there's a big collection pot for the JSDF. It's not my bag, but it shows again that Hobby Master are going down the what ifs route. You know, with the what's the aircraft they just released? Is it the F23 they've just released?
Yeah, the Black Widow.
Yeah. So they obviously released that as well. I mean, there's been a bit of feedback that it's the wrong shape at the front and it doesn't look particularly great at the moment. But they've also proved in the past that they can retool stuff and get it right before they release it. You know, the Tornado being the perfect example with the tail and the canopy. I mean, like for me, the real standout amongst that list was, of course, Moggy the Typhoon, one which I've pre-ordered with Andy at Lofties. You know, so if you are anybody in the UK are looking for that Typhoon, chat to Lofties Models, Andy Beck, and he will look to sort you out on that. I think he'll get it for like the mid-60s in terms of the cost, which is really, really good. I mean, but other than that, I wasn't overly impressed with that release poster. I think Moggy's a fantastic release. And I'm sure we'll see it from Corgi in 148 scale further down the line. But there was nothing really for that. Obviously, I'm more Warbird centric. But from a jet point of view, is there anything else that really caught your eye?
Oh yes, I mean, to be honest, if I were just to pick two on a limited budget, I would just go for the Indian Rafale, the one that our Indian Air Force has, and of course the display Typhoon with the with the D-Day stripes and camo. I think that's what really like it would go well with my Spitfires and stuff.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what it's like. So for those who follow the page, Gary Colgate does some amazing Code 3s, and his one is absolutely outstanding. So that is the litmus test. If it can get close to that, then it's going to be really, really good. But Gary will be able to point him in the right direction because I know he did lots of work in terms of getting the accuracy on it. I think he really struggled with the decals. The decals I don't think were particularly great, but he made a great job of the Typhoon, and it looks the business. It really does look the business. So hopefully we get to see that come. I think it's January it's due out. But the rest of it for me is a bit nondescript. There wasn't a massive amount there. Funny enough, I messaged Noel today just to see how Noel is. I haven't spoken to Noel for a little while. Caliber's obviously gone very, very quiet. We was hoping we'd see, the Hustler or the Tracker would break cover at some point this year, but I think he's just been run off his feet, running a couple of businesses. I think he struggled to be doing both because he is a one-man band. So the Hustler, I hope. I was looking at some of the pictures of it today. I know there was a lot of noise around the engine pods not being right, but I think the potential there is amazing. Be interested to see what sort of price point it comes out at, but that could be real game changing diecast. But we shall see, because it hasn't broke cover yet in particular. So same with the Tracker. I think the Tracker has got great potential. Let's hope that again that breaks cover at some point. So other than that, I mean, there's Corgi seem to have got their act together in terms of a few years back. The production was pretty poor in terms of executing the releases and getting them out on time. But the latest releases come from my door. I've had 3 or 4 of the relatively new ones come through. Excuse me, it's the tail end of COVID still wants to strike back. The PR19 Spitfire, is that on your agenda, Dwight? Excuse me.
I mean, not quite, but I might look to the. It's not on the agenda at the moment because I've just spent quite a bit on another Spitfire, which is the clipped variant of Johnny Johnson's Mark 14. I'm currently obsessed with the Mark 14 Spitfire.
Yeah.
And so at the moment my bag is basically containing the George Burling Spitfire, the Indian Rafale, and the Eurofighter display model.
Yeah. That's not bad at all. Not bad at all. So you've gone for the Hobby Master Mark 14, yeah?
Yeah.
And actually, I had that. I've sold that on many years ago now. I sold it on for good money.
Yeah. Just give me
it's fantastic
1 second.
Model.
Just give me 1 second. I want to show you something brilliant. Just give me 1 second. Hold on.
This is a musical interlude now. Oh, Jason's joined. He comes in. Billy Big Balls. I've spent £1,400 in a month. That doesn't surprise me, Jason. Money is no object to you. Although, what I would say, Jason, just from the weekend, you've got the 4 bit, right? If you reverse that, if you take the 2 zeros off, you've got the score from Saturday.
So I don't know.
Sorry, I had to throw that in.
So this is a display base I had 3D printed. It's of the city of Malta.
Oh, nice.
And it only cost me like 20 quid. And so this is going to go along with my George Burling Spitfire when it comes.
Oh, lovely. So you're going to put a rod in it to display it over the top of it, yeah?
Yeah, something like that.
How are you going to paint it? Are you going to paint it or not?
Yes, airbrush.
Oh, nice.
But anyways, what are your thoughts on today's conversation? I think that was quite surprising.
It's unbelievable. And, I think, I like to cheat is. So Jason's just given me a few digs because for anyone who don't know, Jason, who's obviously a regular contributor on the page, he supports Ipswich. I support West Ham. West Ham actually scored 4 goals on Saturday, which is still blowing my mind. We could have had 10, and that's no exaggeration. But we won 4-1 against his team, Ipswich, and I'll take that any day of the week. So, and getting back to what you said, I think it was lovely for me to sit and watch for a little bit because I know. Obviously, I try and anchor it. It was my brainchild, the Wings Monthly thing, and I love doing it. I love talking to like-minded people about aviation. But as much as we love diecast models, ultimately the reason we like diecast models is because we love the real thing. And to speak to someone who, I'm sure I've got a few jokes in there around job envy. He's lived the dream of what we all wanted to do as kids, pretty much. Either wanting to play professional football for our favourite football team, or we want to drive a Formula 1 car, or you want to be Luke Skywalker. But as a kid, I always wanted to be a fighter pilot. And I worked. We spoke about that dedication at school. I did that bit really well, and I failed my medical for curvature of the spine, something I didn't even realise I had. And that was, I got that far, and I'm proud to say I got that far. But to be able to fly, arguably the most top of the range, the most modern fighting warfare aircraft
ever,
and do that, and then display that aircraft for millions of people to see around the world. Joshua has lived everybody who likes aircraft's boyhood dream. And you know, for him to come on and share that, and he's, you know, your passion is infectious. And give that advice as well to anybody who wants to do it. I think we're really privileged to do that. And it's fantastic for the page. It's fantastic to get people through watching this and sharing this experience. So look, really, really chuffed that he's done that. And I think from our part, and anybody who has watched or continues to watch, if we can now badge Hobby Master to get his aircraft made, and see if Hobby Master don't provide it for him, then we'll do something like a crowdfund to buy him an aircraft and post it to him.
Model. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I was thinking on this. I was thinking along the same lines, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure Hobby Master will provide him one. I'd be really disappointed if they didn't. But if they didn't, I would like to crowdfund one, and whatever money we then make, we give him that model, and the rest of it goes to his foundation. And I think that'd be a really great thing to do from the community. To be able to do that, because he's doing some great work within the wider community in terms of trying to give back, and it's really humbling hearing him come from the background he come from. Obviously, for those who weren't on, who might have now just joined, you know, like growing up in Cuba and emigrating, you know, his parents growing up in Cuba and emigrating to the United States in 1966, I think he said, and then growing up from nothing to making himself into something is a great story to tell. But like I said, I think it'd be lovely for us if we could do that. But I mean, we'll cross that bridge once we can get Hobby Master to make it. Like I said, I'd be very, very surprised if they didn't send him one. But if they don't, then we'll sort it out, I think.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Like, the thing is, I want to message William and tell him, like, you know, send him a hyperlink to our Instagram page, and and just, like, you know, maybe see if Hobby Master and him can collab, and he can sign the model, because even if he's gonna make, like, you know, I would like to benefit of it, because he's been a just, you know, even acknowledge us, and, you know, other people who have ever interviewed him. So I think that would be a very good give back.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great idea. I'm going to speak to Christian on MH3, see if we can get Fred going and see if we can do something on there. Because from experience, if enough people ask, eventually people break and do it. And I think if we get a lot of people to email William at Hobby Master, I might even share it on as a post on the page to see if we can get this made. But I think that'd be a fantastic contribution to, like I said, to him as well. And like I said, if it raises awareness for what he's doing as well, then even better. Dwayne, I'm going to wrap up tonight because I'm not feeling my best. I feel, to be honest with you, dare I say, I feel we've peaked. And I think we. I really do think we've peaked, and I've really enjoyed this evening. Your signal keeps coming and going as well, mate. So I'm not quite sure what's going on down in Mumbai. I don't know if you've been hit by this hurricane that's going through Florida or has taken a diversion through India. But massive thank. I just want to say before, obviously, I'll hand over to you to wrap things up. But massive thank you for Dwayne for getting Joshua on. Like, it's a huge coup for the page. Massive thank you to Dan for joining, although I know he's a busy man tonight and he's got many things to do, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. Dwayne, anything you want to add before I close the call?
No, nothing much. It's just I'm glad I was able to do this for the page and for the love of our passion of Diecast, and I was even glad that he even said yes. My phone actually overheated during the call, that's why I got off, but now yeah, I am happy. I mean, I met my hero, so I can't really complain.
Fantastic. Right, so look, like I said, slightly shorter than usual tonight. Not going to have me waffling on because I'm not at my very best. Thank you, Dwayne, for joining all the way over in Mumbai, which is, I'm sure, 1:15 in the morning over there, if I'm right.
It's 16 minutes to 2.
15 minutes to 2. So yeah, that's really weird. That's like half an hour. It's really strange. I don't know what time. I don't know how your time zones work, but you need to sort that out, mate. Look, thank you very much, guys, for everyone for joining. We'll be back next month in the first week of November with Michael Lowe be joining, talking World War I, because obviously we're coming up to Armistice. And hopefully we've got an even, again, another really special guest if we can pull this off. So, look, thank you, guys. Happy collecting. Keep sharing your pictures, both on the page, on the Facebook group, and on Instagram. stay safe, especially to our friends over in Florida. Hope you're well. But we'll speak to you soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Ciao, ciao.